Greetings, fellow apes. It is Jake from the Average Intelligence Podcast, as you know, because you are watching the Average Intelligence Productions channel. I recently, and by recently I mean today, subscribed to Daily Wire Plus to settle my curiosity on a great number of things, one of which being Matt Walsh's infamous documentary, What is a Woman? I watched it today, and I have thoughts. So I thought I would make a short video that might turn into more videos about Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? I will be reviewing the movie very, very shortly, but if you would like to see a longer, more in-depth review, including the co-host of the Average Intelligence Podcast, leave a comment below and we will do an episode on it. So first I want to start off by saying that, full disclaimer, I do not like Matt Walsh. I don't know why. Well, I know why, but I can't put my finger on the exact reason why, but he comes across as a very know-it-all douche to me, so I've never really been a fan of his. However, I really liked this documentary. It was much better than I expected it to be, but it does have some problems, and we'll get into those in a second. But first, here's the good stuff. So I think the best thing about What is a Woman is the fact that it's fearless in what it's trying to do. It's very clear. Obviously, it's on Daily Wire, so you know, and it's Matt Walsh, so you know where his position is going in. And that's true for most documentary films, though. However, this one I like just because considering the subject matter, they're fearless in their intent. They are looking to, give a counter view on the transgender issue, and I commend them for that because it would have been very easy to kind of tiptoe around it or just not do it at all. And it's brashness and fearlessness. And part of that is the movie has a really good focus. I like the way they frame this because the title is very much what the documentary is about. Matt Walsh's stated point throughout the entire movie is to get an answer to the question, what is a woman? And that's the frame that the documentary takes. But as he moves through the journey of trying to get that question answered, and we know that it's not a real journey. I mean, it is, but it's used almost as a literary device, and I like that because it keeps the aim of the documentary true, and it doesn't really meander too much from that. It does, go in different directions, but in doing so, it's ultimately an exploration of this question, and I really liked how that was framed, and it kept everything very simple, and kept everything from getting so convoluted in the argument of transgenderism as a whole. Matt is framing the question as he is seeking to understand. Now, his bias is undeniable, but in the context of how the documentary works, I really liked how they framed it in this way. Another thing that I did not expect is there was a very good balance of pro versus con when it comes to transgenderism, particularly when it comes to children. But I don't know that it was 50-50 even, but it was pretty close to that. And I can't speak to the quality of the pro, but they seem to be, people that knew what they were talking about, at least in the context of their arguments. And I can speak to the more anti-side because I recognized a few names there. Dr. Jordan Peterson, Dr. Deborah So come to mind. But everybody they talked to really seemed to have a good grasp of what they were talking about within the context of their own arguments. So that was good. That was unexpected that it was that even. One other thing I really liked is Matt Walsh takes a more rationalist stance, meaning that he is arguing, he's not pretending to be an expert on it. In fact, he's taking a more Socratic approach and voices in the very beginning of the movie, he voices his lack of knowledge in the area and why and that he has these questions and simply wants these questions answered. Now, again, we know Matt Walsh is biased, so this is mainly a framing device, but the way it comes across is it's more genuine than I expected it to be. I'm also a big fan of rationalist thinking because just in general, you can throw a lot of data at somebody, but things can still make sense. Like there's this one really, really good moment where Matt is talking to somebody on the street and they're having that whole argument, what is a woman? And the person, like many people in this movie, say that, a woman is someone who identifies as a woman. And then Matt hits them with, are you a cat? And obviously say no. And then he says, okay, can you tell me what a cat is? And they're left dumbfounded because, of course, it's an absurd example, but it illustrates the point. Obviously, you can say what a cat is without being a cat, and that's the point he makes. But nobody can really argue that point, at least on the more pro-transgender side. So I'm a big fan of rational arguments because it enables people to be part of a discussion when they don't have all of the empirical data. And particularly with this subject, there's not a ton of quality empirical data just because of timeline. There just haven't been that many studies done, and Walsh does point this out through the movie. And now the part that most of you have probably been waiting for, here's the bad stuff. Some of the interview sources were pointless, and most of them, well, there was one on the more pro-trans side, but this person was an activist, so I guess it wasn't really pointless. But in particular, he interviewed the owner of a Star Wars shop in Portland, who I guess he's kind of loosely involved in this because apparently there was a city council person in Portland who is trans, and they had an altercation at his shop because of a sign that he posted, that kind of thing. But that has, to me, that has less to do with the transgender argument and more to do with, how much free speech autonomy should a business have versus, how much should an elected official get involved in things like that. So, I mean, it's kind of attached, and the guy's by no means an expert. He does lead to a really funny line, though, because I have a dick. That was pretty funny. But other than that, it wasn't a quality interview. It's almost like if you're watching a documentary about alcohol and you're interviewing people at a bar. As I stated before, another bad thing, Matt Walsh is a know-it-all pretentious douche, and he's actually not as obnoxious in this movie. He's much less obnoxious than he is on his show, but he is still quite obnoxious and a bit of a provocateur. But in this case, it was in service of the documentary, like when he's at the Women's March. I can understand the logic there. Like, it's one of those things where you know why he's there. You know he's there to get a rise out of people. But in the context of the movie, it makes sense because he is trying to get the question, what is a woman, answered. So I know that was supposed to be bad, but that might move over to the good column. One thing I really didn't like in the documentary, I don't like it when any documentary does this, but in particular this one, Matt is interviewing a gender studies professor, and throughout the course of the documentary, now to be fair, this professor is using what I like to call saying a lot of nothing. The professor is talking a lot, talking a lot, not saying a whole lot of substance, just using a lot of big empty words. But then the editor starts blending them together, and I'm not sure if they played this for laughs or if they were just trying to illustrate the fact that this person is saying a lot of nothing. But unfortunately, when you do this, you rob the viewer of knowing what was said in that interview. So I didn't really like that, but at the same time, you can't let an interview segment go for 20 straight minutes. So I understand it, but I didn't really like the way they did it because it was played for laughs, but you're not sure if they were just cutting for time and kind of making a subtle jab, or if they were just deleting things that actually were counter to Matt Walsh's arguments, and thus they didn't want to show in the interview. I'm not saying that's what they did. I'm just saying you can't be sure. So because of that, I didn't really like that part. There were quite a few, starting at the beginning, there's a lot of more cinematic parts of this movie, like Matt Walsh, standing at a board, like I don't know what you call them, but like where you're putting out the yarn, like when you're trying to solve a crime, that kind of thing. Or the bit where he's at his kids' birthday parties and they're very, very distinctly boy and girl, that kind of stuff. Or when he goes fishing for some reason. Like, a lot of these scenes were pointless in the context of the documentary, but I get it. Like, this is the good thing about this movie. It was a documentary, but it had a narrative thread through it, which I really appreciated. It made it more entertaining to watch, and it didn't detract from the subject matter. But some of these more cinematic moments were really, really cheesy. Like, there's one point where he's in a room full of female mannequins, and then he starts breaking stuff. I didn't really think that was particularly well done, but it didn't take too much away from the movie, so it was tolerable, but I just didn't like that part of it. And I actually put this in the bad column when it was supposed to be in the good. The segment of the movie where they were talking about trans athletes was edited just absolutely beautifully, because they have interview segments of people talking about how there's no documentation of disparity among biological female athletes and transgender athletes, and then it shows repeated footage and headlines. People like Fallon Fox and Leah Thomas, and there's so many more, but their names are escaping me at the moment. But this segment was edited beautifully. So in conclusion, I think it's a real shame that the people on the far left, and really most people, didn't really give this movie a chance. Like everything, I've seen some documentaries that by the end of it I wholly disagreed with, but I think people should watch, such as Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. I did not agree with that movie at all, but I think people should watch it, and I feel the same way about this one. You may not agree with it, you may not agree with all of it, you may not agree with parts of it, but this is the kind of movie that should be watched and talked about and added to the overall conversation. And I'll be honest, I think that if this movie had been watched with more unbiased clarity, it probably would have won some awards. Because is it a journalistic masterpiece? No, but is it very good at sort of presenting both sides And while identifying a little bit of bias on their part, which I always commended Daily Wire for, because they never act like they're anything but a conservative show, a conservative network, and they put that out in the open, and I appreciate that. This documentary did the exact same thing. Matt Walsh, from the very beginning, says, this is where I'm at on it, but I have some questions. And I think ultimately that's what a documentary film ends up being every single time. So at least they're transparent about it. So I highly recommend that you watch it and just make the judgment for yourself. Well, thank you again for checking out this little video. I hope to do some more of these in the future. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's a movie you'd like us to take a look at, new or old, leave us a comment down below and we will take a look into it. And like I said before, if you want us to do a longer, more in-depth review of What is a Woman, just let us know in the comments and we will turn it into an episode. And be sure to check out the Average Intelligence podcast every week, Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And be sure to check out our premium content on the Acropolis News Network. The link is down below in the description. Thank you again for watching, and if you like this content, there's going to be a video popping up there. Just click it.